The room hummed with soft jazz, its sultry tones weaving through the flickering candlelight. The scent of sandalwood lingered, mingling with the heady aroma of the wine in Elena's glass. She leaned against the grand piano, her black silk dress catching the golden glow of the flames. It clung to her like a second skin, every curve illuminated, every movement fluid. She didn't hear him enter, but she felt him, an unspoken presence that drew her gaze toward the door. Adrian. Her neighbor. Enigmatic. Dangerous. He stepped into the room as though he belonged there, his crisp white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled just enough to expose strong forearms. A bottle of wine dangled casually in one hand. Couldn't sleep either? His deep voice carried across the room, warm and smooth, like honey laced with temptation. Elena tilted her head, her lips curving into a faint smile. "And you thought you'd find peace here?" "Perhaps," he replied, stepping closer. His eyes, a vivid green, traced her form with open curiosity. "Or maybe I just like the company." She laughed softly, a low melodic sound. "Do you always walk into strangers' homes uninvited?" Adrian smirked, setting the bottle of wine on the piano. "You left your door open. Or was that intentional?" Her breath hitched, but she didn't look away. "Maybe I was waiting for someone interesting." He raised a brow. "And have I met your expectations?" "Not yet," she teased, taking a sip of her wine. Adrian's gaze lingered on her lips as she drank. Without asking, he reached for the glass, his fingers brushing hers in a deliberate caress as he took it from her. Her pulse quickened. "You don't play," he said, glancing at the piano. It was a statement, not a question. "No," she admitted, "but I like the way it feels." A flicker of intrigue crossed his face. He placed the glass down and slid onto the piano bench. His long fingers rested on the keys, teasing out a soft melody that filled the space between them. Elena watched, mesmerized. Each note he played was deliberate, unhurried, like a lover's touch. She moved closer, drawn by the spell he was casting, until she was standing beside him. "Is this supposed to impress me?" she asked, her tone light but her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, his lips curving into a slow, deliberate smile. "No. It's supposed to tempt you." Her heart skipped. The air between them was thick, electric. Adrian's hand left the keys and reached for her waist, pulling her gently but firmly closer. She didn't resist. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling ever so slightly. He leaned back, his gaze holding hers. "Something I've been thinking about since the day I moved in." Before she could reply, his hand slid higher, brushing against the small of her back, his touch setting her skin aflame. His other hand reached for hers, guiding her to sit beside him on the bench. "Your turn," he said. Elena laughed, shaking her head. "I told you I don't play." "I'll teach you," he murmured. His voice was so close, so intimate, it sent shivers down her spine. He placed her fingers on the keys, his own hands resting over hers, guiding her through a simple tune. But the music was an afterthought. All she could feel was him. His warmth, his breath against her cheek, the way his hands lingered a fraction of a second too long. The melody slowed, then stopped altogether as he turned toward her. For a moment, the world was silent, save for the sound of their breathing. "Still not impressed?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. Elena didn't answer. Instead, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a soft, tantalizing kiss. Adrian responded immediately, his hand slipping to cradle her jaw as he deepened the kiss, his movements slow and deliberate, as though savoring every moment. The candles flickered, their glow casting shadows that danced across the walls. The wine, forgotten, sat untouched on the piano. In that moment, nothing else mattered.